said, well, let's go down there and watch one of these games. So we went down to see a Cherokee game. And it was the most boring thing I ever saw. I mean, there was no build-up, there was no big deal, no announcement of the players. They just skated out and went around and around the circle, and everybody sat on their hands. And I was like, oh, what is this all about, buddy? And then we watched the whole period, and nothing happened. And then the second period, 2 guys dropped their gloves. And wow, the place stood up. And I looked at Bob and I said, I can identify with this. We can do something with this, right? So we went and found out where we had to go to get into the league. And it was, we had to go to Roanoke, Virginia, where was the league headquarters. And the first thing they asked me, they said, we hear you're a professional wrestler. And I said, yes, I've been wrestling for a lot of years. And they go, you want to get into the league? And I said, yeah, I think I can do something with this game. You know, and they said, you're not going to have a goon team, are you? And I said, I didn't even know what a goon was. Right? I didn't know nothing about hockey. And I said, oh, you mean the fighting team? I said, no. So anyway, we hired a coach. But we didn't know, and they kept calling me and they said, have you got a coach yet, Ron? No. Did you talk to somebody? Yeah, I talked to a couple of guys. And they would tell me who to get. And then I said, I got this call from a guy in Canada. And he was a goon hockey player. In the NHL level, right? And so his name was Archie Henderson. And he came from pretty much the same area as Archie Goldie, the Mongolian soldier, same part of the country. And he came down, I really liked him, you know, and he was all busted up, right? And he looked the part to me. And so the manager, the head of the league called me up and he says, Ron, have you got a coach? I said, yeah, I got a coach. And he said, who is it? And I said, Archie Henderson. And he went, oh no, Ron, are you serious? No, not Archie Henderson, the player? I go, yeah, what's wrong with it? Anyway, you talked about Knoxville. Nashville came to Knoxville, very first game of the season, first hockey game I ever promoted or ever came to was a Bob. Archie Henderson and the 2 teams are side by side, the way that rink was set up. And Archie Henderson is in one, and they had a little coach called Frenchie something. I can't remember what his name was.
Pierre Frenchie.
There you go, Pierre Frenchie, okay? Pierre Frenchie's a little tiny dude, and Archie Henderson's over here, a big old 6'4", you know, 230 pounds, all busted up, big fighter, right? And so we get a fight. The fight starts, right? And the fight started with 2 guys. And boy, they're fighting like hell, and the referee's going over and they break it up. And then another fight starts over here. And then they go over there and another fight starts. And it turned out to be the biggest fight, the first game of the deal. And the manager of the league said, Ron, we don't want to have any trouble. And I'm watching, I'm going, geez, man, this is pretty bad. And then 4 guys are at it, and then 5 guys are at it. All the players, everybody on the ice is fighting. There's not enough referees to break it all up, right? And I'm watching, I'm going, oh, Bobby, I'm punching him like, we got to do something here, right? And then they finally get control of everybody, and the 2 goalies dropped their stuff and they skated out the center ice. And that first time I've never seen that before, never since. The goalies went at it. And then they finally got the goalies separated, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to hear all this crap tomorrow. And I look, and Archie Henderson reaches over the glass and grabs this little Pierre Frenchie, the coach, and drags him over into the Nashville bench, and he's beating the hell out of him. Oh, God, man. That was my first hockey.
Wow.
Tell us your name, where you're from, and who you want to talk to.
Yeah, my name's Mr. Eisenhower, and I'm from out of Tennessee. And I was going to talk to Ron about the hill turn when Bob gave you that 3rd knee operation. And me and my partner here, we was at the fire show one time, and Bob got all fired up about it, went through memory lane. And it was really a big time, and we put a lot of butts in your seats, and it was good to see that again.
Are you talking about from Mobile, Alabama?
Yeah.
Bob Armstrong was the referee.
Yeah.
Me against Flair for the 10,000 people. Oh, God. Was that a hot finish or what? And wow. I remember when I went in the dressing room to talk to Flair and Bob about the finish. And Flair standing there and Bob sitting and look across from me looking at me. And I get about halfway through the finish and Flair goes like, he shakes his head. And I keep going, and he shakes his head again, and then he turns and he starts walking. And he walks around, and I'm still telling him about what the hell we're going to do, right? And he finally comes back, and he goes, wait a minute. He goes, you're going to get us killed, Ron. You're going to get us killed right now, you know? And it was a really, really hot finish. And we set that up really great. We had a tournament, a one-night tournament. And me and Bob Armstrong were both baby faces. We'd never had any problems. We're both baby faces. We end up in the finals of the tournament, and I win. And Bob then on the TV the very next day comes on and says, God, Ron, you know, he goes, you beat me, you beat me fair and square. He goes, I want to be involved. I got to be involved. I want to be in something in which the world title is going to change hands. I really believe you're going to beat Ric Flair. And he goes, I want to be the referee. Can I be the special referee? And we got the whole company out there and everybody consulted. And the end of the program, Bob Armstrong is going to referee that match. And then in that match, well, I got Flair got me in the figure four. I reversed the figure four. We did all this stuff. I put the filler leg lock on him right in the middle of the ring. He can't get up. Nobody's ever broken. It's over. And Bob down there by his head, and then he comes right down and starts dropping elbows on me. And he puts the boots to me. They tear up my knee. I get my third knee operation. Wow, it was, but what it did is it lit that territory up because Bob Armstrong, for the first time in his career, became a heel. And he didn't become just a regular heel. He became one of the greatest heels I've ever seen. He was absolutely wonderful. People hated him so badly. He changed everything about himself. He grew a mustache. He started smoking cigarettes. Just so, you know, and he would smoke them on the air. He'd light up and Johnny Platt or whoever, Johnny Platt, he ended up slapping his own son in the match because Brad wouldn't be the guy that got hurt accidentally. He slapped Brad, then he slapped the commentator. It was a tremendous, that started one of the biggest runs in probably the history of wrestling down there. And Tom saw all those crowds. It was amazing.
Well, yeah, but that goes back to Bob Armstrong was a badass no matter what. He was a real heel. And that just helped transport him. He wasn't playing a part. He was that guy.
That was who he was.
And that's why it was so great, because he was such a sincere babyface. He was such a man's man. If he was your friend, he was your friend. If you needed somebody to stand beside you, you wanted Bob Armstrong. And it was so great. It was that sinister look, and you just watched him, and you went, oh my God. And the people immediately stood up. That's the crowd you had back then, because people said, no! Yeah, it was an unpredictability. You just knew Bob Armstrong was going to come through. You just knew Ron was going to be the world champion. That was where it got you. That was good stuff, man.
So, really, really enjoyed it. And, you know, what that did, too, is it started the longest feud maybe in all of professional wrestling between two families. The Armstrongs and the Fullers. I got my stable started, and Bob got his boys together, and Bob turned heel, then he turned back babyface, and I turned heel on him, and it just went. It was a 7-year deal. That match started a 7-year feud that sold out for 7 years. Amazing stuff.
All right, anybody on this side got questions? Right here, sir.
I couldn't help it, I was before it got dark. I was standing here looking to go to the Gay Free Bridge. I remember Ronnie Garvin throwing hot a day on that bridge. Back several years ago, I'm from Superior County. In our newspaper, somebody has found a caldwell in their parents' garage. And it was reported that it could have been that belt. Y'all got any take on that?
I'd be interested to see what it looked like if that is the belt. You know, I'm going to say this: that wasn't our idea originally. No, it started with Paul Jones in Florida, in the Tampa Bay Bridge. He threw their title belt off there, and they had a traffic jam on the bridge in Tampa.
And we did too. You know, they shut down the bridge out here, man, because Ronnie took that belt there, and well, you announce on TV, I'm going to throw this hunk of junk, and that's basically what he called it.
Yeah.
And you know, I often wondered about why somebody didn't go get it. Why didn't somebody drag the bottom down there and find that belt? So it probably did turn up somewhere. I'd never heard that it really made it through.
They actually had a picture of a belt. I don't know if it was the belt, but they're saying that they thought it might be, because they didn't know where his parents, they didn't know who to come up with it. It was a guy that's cleaned, his parents had passed away, he was cleaning out their house. He finds this belt and he did some research on it, and
Well, man, that's amazing, man. You know, Ronnie Garvin was a character, man. He loved doing that type of stuff.
yeah, Garvin was a great character.
Yeah, he was a great wrestler.
Yeah, I was in the Coliseum the night that, not very rarely recorded, that he beat Andre the Giant.
Yeah. And they won't show it either. WWE won't show that. And they won't let anybody else show it on YouTube either. You know, and not only did he beat him, he did everything you could do to the Giant. He hit him with chairs, he jumped off in his face, he did everything to the Giant. And that had a lot to do with both those guys being in Montreal. Coming out of Canada, Ronnie came from Canada, Andre came from Canada. Andre had a real affinity for wanting to do good jobs for guys that were from Montreal in that part of the country. Joe LeDuc, guys that came from up there, Andre would really put them over strong. And I do believe you're right. I believe Ronnie Garvin did beat him in that match.
And in the shoot, Ronnie Garvin also said that Andre really loved working for you.
Yeah, Andre was a good guy.
Vince wouldn't let him come a whole lot.
Andre loved the intersection lounge.
Oh,
Where we hung out at matches on Friday.
yeah, he was one of the biggest customers. The first time Andre came to town, I was trying to find a place for him, and I knew it had to be a place with a bar, because I knew Andre was going to drink like crazy as usual. And I found this place at the intersection. I think that was the name of the bar.
Family Inn was at the
Family
corner of
Inn.
North Shore and Kingston.
Corridor and Kingston.
It's a bank there now.
And wow, did we have some nights in that place?
Yes.
One night
We
in that
can't
place.
talk about those here.
Well, we're gonna talk about one of them. One night there, Andre was drinking beer the night before, and he drank so many beers that I wanted to know how many beers he drank. So the next night, we sat in the same corner, and then we had an empty table. I told the waitress to leave that table empty all night. And we took Andre's beers and put them on the table when he finished. Andre drank 114 beers that night. Wow. He had a stack of beers that high, the whole table full.
I got an intersection.
You gotta do it, see?
There was an elevated section at the back of the intersection lounge across from the bar and the table. Anyway, Andre, myself, and Mac McMurray, God rest his soul, were sitting up there, right? And I don't know how much Andre had to drink at that point in time, but I know the guy that walked up, who was about 150 pounds and about 5'6" tall, had too many. Because he moved the bottles and stuff aside and sat up there and he said, "Come on, big guy." He went arm wrestle Andre. And I thought, is this man insane or what? And it had to be Andre's voice and the way Andre looked at him. And he said, "I think maybe you should go sit down." Okay. That was the end of it.
I got another one kind of like that. Similar to that. Andre was we were drinking beer in the back, and some guy kind of just eased his way in. It was a big table full of a bunch of us around there, and he started drinking beer. and Andre was buying everybody's beer. Andre would buy 1 beer for you and 6 for himself. That's the way he ordered. They'd give him 1, bring me 6. You know, and his hands, when he put his hands around a can of beer, you couldn't even see the can. So Andre kept looking at me and then looking at the guy. And so toward the end of the night, and the guy had been there hanging out, and he got up and ready to leave. And he started to leave. And Andre says, who is that guy? You know, and I said, I don't know. And he walks around the table and he gets in front of the guy. And the guy looks up at him. You know, and Andre goes, you pay for a beer? And the guy goes, first he started shaking his head no, and then he looked up again and went, yeah. So Andre never did. He reached over his shoulder and took his wallet out of his pocket. He opened up his wallet. He took all of his money. He took it off, stuffed it in his pocket. He put his wallet back in his pocket, and he says, "You go now."
While we're telling Andre's stories, this happened in the Carolinas. He rode with me and Scott Casey to Raleigh for the matches. And Raleigh's probably, Tommy, an hour and a half, I guess, from Charlotte, from home base. Anyway, so we leave the arena, we stop at 7-Eleven, and we each get something to drink. Andre buys a case of beer. And so he's sitting in the back seat. We're maybe 40 miles out of Charlotte. And he said, "Hey, boss." "Yeah, what? We got another beer stop." He killed that case in about an hour's time or a little more, right? And I said, "Well, we're going to, Scott and I are going to a club. You want to just go with us?" "Yeah, okay." So we didn't have to make the beer stop. We get to the club. We go in. I said, I need to go to the little boys' room. Andre said, "Me too, boss." Scott says, "I'll find us a table." So we go in to the restroom. And I'm at one urinal, and Andre is at this one, and we're standing there doing what we're doing, and all of a sudden I hear a female voice. And I look, and this woman walks in, and she walks up and looks over, and she said, "I just want to see if all the parts match," and turn around and walk out. Did they? I never checked that.
Okay, well, maybe we'll get off Andre.
You went right here, okay. Tell us your name, where you from?
I'm Travis Law from Irvine. And Ron, you did one of the best angles I've never seen before, haven't seen since. You and Robert were in the cave with the New Guinea headhunters that ripped the ring open. The third headhunter comes through. I was wondering what kind of plan and where you got the idea for that.
Oh man, we did a whole lot of things that never been done before. You know,
Or since.
Or since,
Or
yeah.
since.
Yeah, we were thinking, you know, cage matches, the normal deal is somebody gets the cage door open, they come in and they, you know, and it gets to be 3-on-2, whatever it might be. So anyway, we started thinking about, you know, what could we do that's never been done? And there were only 2 headhunters. Kevin Sullivan was the manager of those headhunters. And there was only 2 headhunters for months and months. And then one day I was over by Kevin's and I see the 3rd guy. I go, "Who is that?" He goes, "Oh, that's so-and-so," you know. He goes, and I said, "Can he work?" And he goes, yeah. And I said, "Well, how come you never said anything?" So now we got a 3rd headhunter. So we got the big cage match. And I think it's a Bob Armstrong type deal. So it's with the headhunters and me and Rob and Jimmy. And we hit this guy underneath the ring. There'd never been but 2 headhunters, and then in the middle of the match, we gave him a butcher knife. And we put him in there at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon under the ring. He was there till the end of the main event. You know? And then what he was going to do is he was going to shove that knife between the plywood, right? And I was wondering, I hope the hell that I ain't in that area where he pokes this knife up through there, right? And he shoves the knife up there and he cuts the tarp. He cuts the mat. And then pushes the plywood up. It was a freaky deal. I mean, everybody in the building, you know you got them when it goes from roaring to silent. You know, and they see the knife, and and then they see the plywood, they see the mat, and now there's a third guy, and now it's 3 against 2, so yeah, it was pretty good angle. We did one fairly similar to that in Knoxville. We had a cage match, and I don't remember who was in it, but we had Tim Fry, who used to be the Shogun in 1988 with USA Wrestling. He did a whole lot of the job boy deals. He actually rappelled from the ceiling of the Coliseum about 200 feet down and into the middle of the ring, and end up having another great finish. It's fun to come up with stuff like that, though.
Anybody on this side? Hold on, I'll come back to you. Make it right. Tell me your name, where you from?
Mark from Gay City, Virginia. Ron, I wanted to ask you, did you ever look into maybe running matches like a super event, maybe at Neon Stadium ever?
My dad did those things as wow. My dad was great at it. He did monster ones. He drew 40,000 people in Mobile, Alabama, in the Latin Memorial Stadium in 1958 against Mario Galento. He drew 30-something thousand in Atlanta in Ponce de Leon Baseball Stadium with Mario Galento, and Rocky Marciano was the referee in 1965. He did the baseball stadiums and one football stadium show.
Tell them how one of the ways they got the drop. One of the ways they drew the house in Mobile, and I heard Buddy tell this story, is Mario was in a restaurant on Government Street, which is the main drag in Mobile. Buddy's walking down the street, he happened to see Mario through the window. So Buddy goes in the restaurant, and they start an argument, and they get into a fight and break up the table. They both get hard ways. If you don't know what that is, come up and I'll show you. But that means I'm going to catch you with my knuckles right here, enough to tear. He's not going to use a blade. We're going to get a hard way. That's why it's called that, right? The police were called. They were locked up. They posted bail. They were in the whole. That's what people believe. How could you not believe that? These two guys got locked up in the Mobile jail, fighting in a restaurant on Government Street, breaking furniture, and whatever that cost them, they made a lot more than 40,000 people.
Oh yeah. Actually, Dad had a Cadillac during that time frame, and he said that when they fought out of the restaurant, they tore the restaurant up and broke the window out. They threw a chair through the front window of the restaurant. The police were there, and the police wouldn't stop it. The police recognized who they were, and they all backed off like, oh, God, man, it's the two wrestlers, right? And Dad took Galento, who had long black hair, and he took him by the back of the hair, and he ran him over to his Cadillac, and he slammed his face into his Cadillac hood. And Dad said it dented that Cadillac hood. His face hit that hard. But when they wrestled in the actual match with 40,000 people, the match lasted 5 minutes. Mario Galento had 75 stitches in one eye. Dad had both his eyes black for 2 weeks, so black that he couldn't see. Mom had to drive him wherever he wanted to go. There's a picture, and I've got it on Studcast. If you look in the gallery, there's a picture of Mario Galento about 2 weeks after that match, and you would say this guy got hit by a truck. I mean, he just looks unbelievably. They just busted. They did it, and they went right to Atlanta. They did it again for 30,000 people, set records in all these cities. The same two guys doing hard weights, and they hard weight each other in all their matches that they had like that. They were all real, so real that I saw a picture of a kid when I was a kid of the match. Dad was bloody all the way down to his waist. So was Galento. And I looked, and there was nobody in the first 5 rows of ringside. And I asked my dad, I said, what happened to the people? And he said, we were throwing blood on them 5 rows back. He said they got up and left. They couldn't take it. It was another day and time. For sure.
All right, back here.
Tim Burke here in Knoxville. Ron, I was there that night. I was 13 years old when, I will say we, as all the fans, broke the record at the Coliseum. But do you remember who else was in town that night?
No, I remember it was a great choir. I do remember that.
Was that,
It was Elvis Presley. He was performing at Stokely that night. That
Oh,
was his
geez.
last concert in Austin.
So we had Elvis across town, and we did a record crowd at the Coliseum with Elvis. I'll tell you another story about Elvis. That's just pretty remarkable. In this Studcast, way back, I was doing my dad's time in Memphis, and Memphis was a tremendous wrestling town. Dad went there and he built a monster wrestling city. It never died, and he had there was part of the figure there. Tony Basilio was doing the shows with him, and Tony says to me, he goes, Ron, he goes, did you know that Elvis Presley did a concert in Ellis Auditorium? That was the auditorium that my dad had his wrestling in. He said they drew 5,400 or something, 4,000 or 5,000 people. He said in the next night or 2 nights later, he said wrestling drew 9,000. Yeah, wrestling was hotter than Elvis in Memphis. I mean, that's his hometown, man. So, yeah, it's really amazing, man, what the business was like back in those days.
yeah, exactly.
Wade Jenkins again. This is for Dr. Tom. I think everybody in here has probably heard the story of you and Tracy Smothers on the side of the road, and neither one of y'all really actually wanted to fight. But if one of y'all had wanted, or both of y'all had wanted to fight, who'd have won?
Not him.
Look, Tracy would have beat me with an inch of my life. That's how I knew. That's how I knew Tracy Smothers didn't want to fight. I didn't want to fight either. I mean, it was one of those things. Let me just share this. If you haven't heard the story, here's the deal. So, the Rock and Roll Express and the Heavenly Bodies work at Survivor Series. We come back home and we've had a couple matches in WWE. And Tracy Smothers goes on a run of bad luck. He's potatoing people. He knocked Brian Lee's eye wide open, gave him like 12 stitches or something. He just potatoing people. He's just all over the place. And Tracy was a great kid. He's a great kid, great guy. But he got very excited, and you could get him riled up real easy. And I would do the old poke the bear thing. I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. That kind of stuff. And it got to him. So rock and roll. Ricky and Robert stopped at Cracker Barrel, and Jimmy and I stopped at the same Cracker Barrel. We just sit on the opposite side, but we're riding together, so we gotta go to the town. And I say in the car, Ricky tells me that one day Tracy's gonna want to hurt me because I'm messing with him. I was just having fun. But he said, something about Tracy. I said, Tracy is a friggin' idiot, and you can quote me. But I'm cutting a promo. I didn't think Ricky would quote me. Just tell him he's an idiot. You can quote me on that. Well, so he does. He goes in the locker room that night and we have Brian Lee is wrestling Tracy in a singles match that night. We also have a battle royal. I just have to stand up and say this too. But Tracy is going out and he doesn't want to cooperate at all. He is hot at me. And I go out to watch the match, and he looks at me and he goes, and he won't work with Brian at all. Brian doesn't know what's going on. Brian comes back and says, I don't know what's wrong with you. You wouldn't work. I said, I know. And I know the story. So I told the heels in the locker room, we go out for this battle royal. The heels go out first, and I'm there, and here comes Tracy, and the baby faces are behind him. And as Tracy gets in the ring, he gets to me, and the baby faces are trying to hold him back. And I said, guys, let him get it out of the system, do what he wants to do, and we'll be done. But they had to hold him back because they knew they'd kill me. That's okay. But they did. They got him back. So I'll see you later. I'll see you later. So I'm riding back with Brian Lee. And we see Ricky and Robert and Tracy on the side of the road. And I said, Brian, pull over, pull over. He said, no, we're just going to keep going. So those guys come up and get past us this time. I said, Brian, blink your lights and pull them over. Because I want to get this out that night. I want to get it over with. We're supposed to start a new program with them. That's the other thing. So these guys pull over, and I get out. Tracy's in the back seat. He hurt his knee that night. And he looks at me and says, "Hey, man, I know what your problem is. I'll kick your ass." I'm like, "Oh, hey, man, what the hell?" So finally he throws a punch. It's like, if you know Tracy, that's the way he did it. He would make sure he threw these punches. So, okay, great. And then finally, I don't remember how it happened, but we lock up. On the side of the road, you want to fight, you want to kill me, we're going to lock up in a wrestling hole. So, and this is the truth too. As soon as we lock up, here we go with the blue lights. And there's a nice officer that pulls over, and Tracy says to me, "You have kids, I have kids, we don't need to go to jail tonight." And we don't need to go to jail. We told the cop that we're working on spots for our next match on the side of the road. He said, "You're not going to do it in my county, get out of here or you're going to jail." So we got out. But he didn't want to fight. I didn't want to fight. We were really good friends, but like any good friend, you're going to poke him. You're just going to play with him. And I thought he was playing. Then again, I knew, I made him mad. But Tracy was great. He really was. He was a lot of fun to be around. He was a lot of fun to be around. But sometimes he got excited.
Any more questions? Any questions? Right here.
Yeah, just for the studs, Ronnie versus Knoxville. So one of the things I remember most of all when I was a kid, and this would have been mid to late 70s, I was one of those who would rush home on Saturdays, watch the Southeastern wrestling, 2 o'clock, 10 p.m. But the Stomper was it's a Coliseum, they're rolling the film, right? So I'm watching from home on Saturday, right? So what had happened to me before. And so I was wondering how this was planned. So the Stomper was in the ring, and I don't know if it's Don Carson, I can't remember who all it was, but suddenly the stud comes from out of the crowd in street clothes, clears the ring, and then the crowd was just going crazy after that. So, and I don't think you had been in town. I don't know if anybody knew you were in town or not. I don't know if that's how you were. I mean, it was so long ago, but I just remember that one really stood out. It's one of my favorite wrestlers.
Probably you're talking about 1988 USA Wrestling.
Was it that late? Okay.
Yeah, it was. I think it was in 1988, and I was just commentating. I owned the company, but I didn't want to wrestle, and I ended up Gordon Taylor was the commentator, and I was on with Gordon, and Archie really, this kid, the young kid, Morton kid.
Bob Morton.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and he was wrestling against Archie, and he got blood. Wow, I mean, it was one of the worst blood jobs I've ever seen. It was so bad that when we went back and started to put the show together, that I got concerned. I said, "This is way over. It's way overboard. It's way too much." And we had to figure out how to blur his face out when they started showing his face. And then Archie just stomped him, and he was all bloody as heck. And then along came Ron Wright. Ron Wright was his manager. The dog was involved. The stormtrooper was involved. They were all on top of it. And I'm sitting there with Gordon, and I said, "Somebody's got to do something here, Gordon." So I said, "Well, I might as well get in the ring, right?" So I hit the ring and made the best comeback I could make, and it was the very last USA wrestling show. It was the last one. And we had been growing every week. The crowd had grown every week. We started out with maybe 25% of the Coliseum full to begin with. That show, when I came back to wrestle the Stomper, we sold out. It was the first sellout, and it was the last USA show ever. And I went and sold the company to the guy that bought the Calhoun. So, yeah, but I think that's the angle you're talking about. And it was wild. It was a pretty wild angle. Sure.
Anybody else? Right over here.
from Knoxville. I'd like a question for Les. If you could talk a little bit about the feud that you and Whitey Caldwell had with Ron and Don Wright. That was
Oh,
great
wow.
times.
Yeah, I was mentioning that earlier. Our feud started, John got television in early '69. And Whitey and I were the first babyface team that were over on the TV, and Ron and Don Wright were the first heel team. And that feud carried on until I left to go to Eastern Canada in April of 1970. So we've been going at it for almost a year and a half through title changes. We did the Avengers thing where Whitey and I told this story earlier, to get to this, Whitey and I were the tag team champions, and Ron boarded us in defending the titles on TV in a 2 out of 3 fall match that Saturday. And back when television first got color, the lights had to be extremely bright, and that studio at Channel 26 wasn't very big, so it was hot in that studio. And the end of the match was that Donnie and I would end up fighting on the floor. The referee would be distracted with us, which Ron was going to pull a cloth with chloroform on it and put but it was chloroform. And he was going to put, Whitey knew to hold his breath, but in that studio with that heat, I thought everybody in the damn studio was going to end up asleep. Right? Because you could, there was no way anybody said, well, there's no chloroform in here. If you were in that studio, you knew it was chloroform. Everybody could smell it into place. And this is what started the Avengers thing. John came up with the idea, Whitey and I were going to be the masked Avengers. And so that was another phase of that feud. We drew a house, well, first of all, we drew a record house in the amphitheater, which as far as I know, is still holds. I don't know it for sure. But during that year and a half that we had that run, we drew a crowd there in the rain. John, now, if we were in the amphitheater when Ron had it, and we saw it was going to rain, we'd move into Jacob's building. That was no sweat. John said, no, we're going to go home. He wasn't going to move that rain, right? So this one night, it was raining lightly, started to pick up a little bit. John said, we may have to call this off. And Whitey said, John, you better look out this window before you decide to make a statement. And so John looks out, and there's 2 lines at the box office all the way around from the entrance to the amphitheater, around the boxing arena, and out of sight in the rain. So he said, okay, we're going to go. So they put us on second because the idea was that the main event was in the ring, there was no refunds. They put a preliminary match on first, went about 10 minutes, I guess. I went out barefoot because the soles of wrestling shoes on wet canvas is like putting drag racing slicks on a wet pavement. There is no such thing as traction. And the lights over the ring are swinging back and forth. To lock up with my opponent, I couldn't look straight on because the angle of the water coming would blind me. People sat right there and watched, right? I don't know how many things, but it was a year and a half that we had so many great houses and so many great matches. And it would have continued, I guess, for a while if I hadn't, made the commitment to go to Eastern Canada. And it was one of the most fun times I've had in a long, and Whitey was a great partner. He loved Bonnie Lou and Buster. He used to be on TV here. and that's the last thing. I'm an R&B fan, man. But I'd go sit in Whitey's room before we'd check out so he could watch Bonnie Lou and Buster before we'd head for Morristown or Newport. One night in Morristown, they had no skirt on the ring, the canvas that hangs and covers the framework. And so if you were sitting on the floor, you could look under the ring and see the people on the other side. Anyway, we get in a 4-way, Don, Ron, and Whitey and I. Ron says, throw me out, follow him. So I pitched him, followed him out, he shoots under the ring, so I go under after him. And we get about midway, he turns around, he said, I'm gonna tape you up. I said, what? He said, we threw some punches, and so anyway, he had a roll of it. He said, athletic tape in his tie tape. He gets it out and he starts taping my neck to the ring support, right? And so he's facing me, and all of a sudden he said, "Oh hell!" I said, "What? Oh hell!" I can't move right. I can't see. He's looking past me, and then he starts backing out. And I'm thinking, what the hell's going on? You know, so I'm starting to try to pull at the tape to get rid of it. And then in my peripheral vision, I see a body. And there's a fan with a knife. He's going to help me out. So Ron has disappeared already. He turned around and said, "I got you, Les." I said, "Don't worry about it, man. I got it." Don't get near my neck with that damn knife. But those are the kind of matches we had. I mean, there's no answer. Well, I don't know how long Ron had wrestled here for John before I came. I came in '68. And then he was managing, he was working something for Smokey, wasn't he? In the early 90s. So you talk about a run of, now he had part of that run was as a babyface when Fuller had the territory. But other than that, he was like the top heel in this area from the 60s up until he managed in the 90s. I don't know where anybody's had any run like that ever. And he wasn't a great wrestler. He was a great talker. He was a brawler, but you know, it was those promos, those interviews that made it. I wasn't here when he had a horse, him and Whitey got into it over a horse, and somebody won the other guy's horse. I mean, it was insane, but it was one of the most fun times I've ever had. Whitey was an amazing partner and a good friend, and I've been hit with a chisel. And this guy was there. He borrowed that chisel. Now, there weren't any contacts back then. You didn't wear them in the ring anyway. Rocky Smith, poor Rocky's head to death because he punched Rocky and he didn't see red right away. He hit him again. He cut Rocky 3 or 4 times. Rocky, that's enough. For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Ron had a machinist make him, basically it fit around his hand. It was made out of stainless steel with a blade, like a razor blade, machined right in the middle of it. And he'd slip that out, slip it on his hand, you sit still, boom, one shot. And nobody could say it's a blood capsule or anything else, because he hit you and he came away, you were bleeding.
Bo has one of them.
I don't doubt Bo may have a pair of Ron's underwear. I don't know.
He has one of Ron Wright's too.
He's probably got maybe part of Ron. I couldn't say for sure. But yeah, that was what I've never seen him anyplace else. And it worked. And it was a hell of a gimmick. But yeah, it was a great run with those guys, and we drew a lot and had a lot of fun with it.
All right,
How we looking here, Bo?
we're right at time. One question. Anybody got the last question?
I got one. I'm Tommy Lowe from Morristown, Tennessee, and I just have a question. What are you guys watching now that makes you excited about the future of pro wrestling?
I'll let you. Okay.
I've seen 2 matches this year.
What were they?
Dragunov and Walter,
Yeah.
and Danielson and Omega. I've seen a lot of other clown acts, but that's it. Yeah, Dragunov and Walter and Omega and Danielson. Those are great wrestling matches. There's a lot of today, there are a lot of great entertainers, a lot of great athletes, a lot of great acrobats. Workers, I put parentheses, workers, there are not a lot. You see 3 of them sitting here, because in our day you either were or you weren't. If you couldn't work, you weren't in the business. That was pretty much the nuts and bolts. But the difference is we told the story. These guys are working for the pop. And that's the biggest difference, I think. is we knew the finish, and if we were going 45 minutes or an hour, we were going to build it on the fly. You know, we knew what we were going to do at the end, but the 58 minutes to get us there, we had no idea. Today, these guys sit, I don't know how they do it. In the dressing room, you do this, and I'll do that. I don't know how they remember. And it tells because their facials and their body language, their details aren't as marked as ours were. They're too busy remembering spot number 47. And I wish they weren't. I wish they'd learned to work. This guy over here, I will say this. He and I have worked a lot together as trainers, and we teach good, sound basics. And somebody said he's probably one of the best damn trainers in the world. I would agree with that. And I will also say that I damn sure am as well. Yeah. Right? And we teach wrestling, we don't teach entertainment. So, but, you know, it's a different time, and I adjust, but I'll say this, AEW has some great workers now. If they use them in the right way, you'll see some great wrestling.
So that's, well, I guess we're pretty close to, have got our time in, and before we go, I want to announce something that some of you probably have already heard about it, but next June, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, first weekend in June, we're going to have a much bigger tribute than this tribute tonight. We're going to have a tribute to Knoxville's history, basically, in professional wrestling. It's going to be a 3-day event. We're going to have wrestlers and fans from all over the world. We're going to put Knoxville on the wrestling map for the first time, as it should be. We're going to have the type of events that they have in the Carolinas and a lot of places in the country.
There'll be wrestling matches, Q&A sessions, photo sessions with stars, memorabilia, merchandise, all of it. If you've been to the one in Charlotte or any of these fan fests, it'll basically be that. It'll be in the Jacobs building, 3rd, 4th, and 5th of June.
Yeah,
Tom, you need to get Dirty White Boy there. I want to see Dirty White Boy.
Yeah. Well, I don't.
So, yeah, you know, that's a great old building. It's a historic building. Wow. So many fantastic workers have been in that building. And on the last day, we're going to have a live event there. We're going to have a tournament, 1-day tournament. We'll have guys like you're training here, some of the great independent trained wrestlers come in there, trying to hook them up with old-time wrestling legends as their managers. And have a tournament in honor of my grandfather, give away the Roy Welch Cup on the Sunday afternoon that ends the entire 3-day event. So that's June 3rd, 4th, and 5th.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Make plans to be there. You're going to see a whole lot of stuff. We're going to take that building and make a real showplace out of it. We'll put 2 big screens in there and have people going around with cameras, follow them all day, everywhere they go, talking to different wrestlers, picking up different events. It should be a really good event.
All right. And we're coming back to the 24th of November, day before Thanksgiving, and hopefully Jimmy Goldman will be healed and here with us on the 24th.
Yeah.
Hey, Ron, if you have not already, YouTube, Southeastern Rewind, subscribe, hit the notification button, because we're putting a lot of content up there every week. And some of the stuff that you talked about here tonight, the Southeastern stuff from the arenas, we have some of that will be going up.
Yeah.
And
we're going to be soon adding Continental.
Yeah.
Continental shows to those USA shows, eventually Southeastern shows. You'll be able to see old school wrestling
and the Rewind Review every week.
And the Rewind Review. We do a lot of good stuff on there, and you'll be on there tomorrow. You want to watch tomorrow? This first part will be on tomorrow. Within another week after that, we'll probably have the question and answer
it's
session.
on there now.
Yes.
I got a notification saying so I'll come back.
Yeah, it's on tonight. You know, and obviously you're not going to see this one. You're lucky enough to be here, and thank y'all all for being here. As a matter of fact,
yeah, we've
been great.
Enjoyed it.